this is something you want to do, don't do it the way this guy did it. Passenger still, he's like, nah, I'm not having it. You have to be aware because it could backfire. The only reason I'm pointing like these scenarios out so that you have that perspective of what could be going through someone's head when you try to offer them a cash ride. Personally, I would report him after. He has no idea how unsafe he's making it for someone in his car. The car was financed. He still has to pay back every single thing he owes. You know, you have YouTubers here saying, yeah, take cash rides. You just tell your insurance is like taking your brother or your sister. It was raining. Then I got into an accident with an 18-wheeler and totaled my car with a passenger who was paying cash. There is a way to legally do this. If I were to do this, I would want to do it properly. If I were to do it illegally, that's what would make me comfortable to do it illegally. I know that not everyone is going to feel comfortable with doing cash rides when I'm done with this. And some of you might be. Some of you might be willing to pay the price for it. Some of you won't be. That's all okay. Everyone has different tolerance levels for their risk. So let's start, parsing through what people are saying. These are real life stories. So a couple of these are from Reddit. Driver asked me to pay him more money. It's 7 a.m. I have a flight at Chicago airport and it takes 1 hour to get there. I ordered a $102 Uber ride to the O'Hare airport, which takes 50 minutes approximately. Anyways, I'm waiting, my Uber arrives and the guy steps out to help me with my suitcase. Going good until he asked me how much my ride costs and I tell him it was $102. He then tells me how Uber takes a large percentage of what's charged and how he only got $33 from that ride. He then tells me that $33 isn't worth it for the long ride plus traffic and that he'd like for me to pay him the other $80. I think he meant $70, but just did the math wrong. I'm thinking he's joking because I've never had something like this happen. So I ask him, how could I possibly pay? Which he replies, I take cash, card, Venmo, so on. Person says, like, you're crazy if you think I'm going to pay an additional $80 on top of the $102 I paid. I just told him I'd cancel, to which he was like, all right, and drove off. But then I got charged a $5 cancellation fee because the convo was like 5 minutes long. I did end up getting it back. I've just never had this happen to me before and I'm shocked, but I can't stop feeling like a jerk because I've worked as an Instacart driver before, and so I understand the feeling of being underpaid. I feel sorry that he only got $33 for the ride, but I'm a broke college student and it's already hard for me to pay for Uber rides. Also, the entire thing was just uncomfortable and I'd rather not experience it again. So she puts up an edit. She says, not once did the guy mention me canceling the ride, just that I pay him the extra $80 when I get there. People are asking multiple questions, but yes, I did contact Uber to report him. So she ended up reporting him. And yes, I did make my flight with 30 minutes left to spare, all right? Update. People keep mentioning about how he probably meant for me to cancel and that it's what I should have done, but that's not the point. There's many things that could go wrong after I cancel the ride, especially with my safety, but so many people in the comments are overlooking that. So there seems to probably have been a language barrier between the driver and the rider. And what he probably wanted her to do was to cancel the ride and then pay him that fare to take her to the airport. Some people, they win with this, right? They find themselves in that scenario and passengers are willing to do it. Sometimes the drivers will say, I'll do it like for 80% of the costs that Uber and Lyft were going to charge you. Technically, this breaks the terms of service with Uber and Lyft and it is illegal. Now, I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't doing it based off of what I just said, but I want you to be aware, right? It'll be a extreme disservice for me to be here and like say you should or shouldn't do something and not give you information. So in this scenario, this woman wasn't about it. You might find someone who it is, but it takes one person who's not about it to report you to Uber and Lyft, and then something happens to your account. So that's something you got to take in mind, right? That's real. I'm not trying to like scare you from not doing it. I'm trying to provide you with the information of what could happen if you try to do it. Now to this, I got to put myself in that driver's shoes, right? If I was the type of person to do this, the solution, you have to be more careful about who you make these agreements with, right? I probably wouldn't ever tell someone to cancel a ride and pay me in cash. What I would do is I would take the ride and I would like be like, hey, when are you coming back? Do you live here? Like, this is a one-time thing. If you want my business card, here, take my business card, give me a call, and I'll pick you up next time. That's what I would do on that trip, build that relationship with her. That's still illegal, but I think in that scenario, even if the passenger doesn't want to call you up for the trip next time, I think that'll still lead to a less likely chance that she's going to report you to Uber or Lyft. If this is something you want to do, don't do it the way this guy did it. I don't think that's a very good way to do it. So we'll move on to the next. So this is from another customer. He's in r/Uber again. Uber driver requests me to cancel and will do the trip for cash. So I don't know how this started, but I think he asked how much is the ride. He says $137. The driver asks if he speaks Spanish. He says no español. And then he puts the specific amount, $137.86. The driver says, okay, cancel it and give me 120 cash and I'll take you. Yes? And then the passenger says, you can cancel it. I'm not doing that. So this is like similar to what I described with one missing component where he's offering a cheaper ride to this person. Even though the ride is being offered more cheaply, passenger still, he's like, nah, I'm not having it. So we're seeing where you can still offer a discount. Passengers can still be uncomfortable with that, right? The point I'm making is you have to be aware that if you're going to try to drum up how you drum up your business, because there are going to be passengers who might be weirded out by it. If I was trying to build up my long distance portfolio of cash rides, is what we call them, like off platform rides, I would take him. Yo, are you coming back? Is this like a regular thing for you? Would you like to work out an agreement where I come and pick you up or whatever? And then that's what I would do for the next time. But doing it this way is extremely like risky for your Uber and Lyft account. I don't know how much about Uber and their rules, so I don't know if it's ethical. Today, she had to go into the city for a procedure and the driver told her to cancel the trip and he would do it for cash instead. Is this ethical? This user says, I do this when I ask if it's a far ride, and most of the time a passenger says yes. I just say 10% off your initial fare and I'll take you. Sometimes people will say, wow, like, why would you ask me to do that? And then I'll tell them I have rideshare insurance that I pay more in case of some BS. But anyways, yes, it might be illegal, but in the end, we both win. That's just me. All right, so this is kind of the first time we're seeing rideshare insurance. So I want to point out you can get rideshare endorsement, but that's different from commercial endorsement, right? If you're taking passengers offline and you want to protect yourselves from an accident, there are drivers out there who don't care. But if you want to protect yourselves from being sued by the passenger, you would need commercial insurance. One huge talking point by even Uber Jeep AZ, he said this in some of his videos, is it's just the same as you taking your friend or family to the grocery store. And you might be able to get away with that in some cases, but the second that the passenger, you get in an accident and the passenger sues you, there ain't no family or friendship there, you know? So that is a point we'll dive a little more deeper into that. The driver is doing this because on the regular, we drivers hear from the passenger how much they paid for the trip. I had one who wanted an aux cord for less than like 5-minute trip, 1.8 miles. I've had that happen and it is kind of annoying. When I said no because he'd be in the car less than 5 minutes and it takes my map off my CarPlay screen, he came back with, but I paid $40 for this ride. I replied with, I'm getting $14. That's good. That's a good response. So driver asked me to cancel in Venmo instead. I had a weird thing yesterday where I had a long ride and the driver said to cancel and Venmo him to save money. I wasn't comfortable with that because it means it's not tracked. I'm a female too and have had some sketchy rides in the past. I don't think that his intentions were remotely malicious, but he kept pushing on it until I told him I have a new phone and my payment apps aren't installed yet. Truth. After the ride, he said, you're going to tip me good, right? She says, I always do. And told me to rate him 5 stars. And she says, I usually do. Exception is unsafe driving. Lyft drivers. Is this a reasonable request from him? I don't want to hurt his livelihood, but I also thought that this was some kind of weird interaction. He always was bringing me between my 2 residences, and I don't want him to hold a grudge, right? Because he knows where she lives now. While I doubt anything would happen, it just may be stupid to mention. So I think that she has concerns. Normal person, you probably wouldn't do anything malicious, but you have to be aware of the potential of how people see your actions because it could backfire on you, right? And that's real. Like these are real stories. I'm not making this up. I'm not saying, oh, but what if this? What if that? This is a person who took to the internet to help develop an opinion on something that they found to be a little weird. They stated that, hey, I don't think it's malicious, but still feels weird. And something doesn't have to be malicious for you to get reported. You have to understand the thought process of what these people could be thinking. To one, if you decide that you want to build up your cash tip business without doing it the correct way, what are you looking for? Like what mental state are you like offering these rights to? You have to be very like cognizant of it. You have to like, if you're going to build that business, you have to make sure like it can't blow back on you. Because most of your rides are probably going to come from Uber and Lyft, right? That's how you're going to first meet the passenger. And then you try to get those passengers on cash rides. But if you're blocked from Uber and Lyft, it's now going to become harder for you to do that. So that's the only reason I'm pointing like these scenarios out so that you have like that perspective of what could be going through someone's head when you try to offer them a cash ride. So I assume this is a passenger. It says, no, this is not a reasonable request and you should report this driver to Lyft. Someone says, yes, it is a reasonable request. It's just a request. Communicate and say no, period. He's a contractor, not an employee. Never pay outside the app and report drivers who ask you to. That's 1-star behavior. And the only tip I'd give them is don't do that again. So, right, you say that you try to get cash rides with this guy, he's reporting you. Someone says, dude, that would scare me so much. Edit, I'm a female, and personally, I would report him after. He has no idea how unsafe he's making it for someone in his car. Just things you gotta like be aware of. Let's move forward. He says, I picked up someone from the bus station and he told me his story. He had an accident doing a cash ride as an Uber driver. He had a customer in the car, obviously. So far, his car was totaled. He's out of the car. No insurance will cover the fix of the car. The car was financed. He still has to pay back every single thing he owes. Customers filed a lawsuit. He had to pay an attorney to lose the suit in a slightly more grateful fashion. The other driver's insurance filed suit. He had to pay an attorney to represent him to cut a slightly better deal. And he avoided being fired from his day job. Oh, because it wasn't actually a crime. Okay. His license was suspended for driving without insurance. That it is a crime. It's just not a jailable crime, I guess, is what he's trying to say. And he has to pay the damages to the other vehicle injuries before his license can be reinstated. And in personal consequences, he had to move to a hotel on Skid Row from the suburbs, close enough to work that he can take a bicycle. And to make matters better, if he bankrupts any of that debt away, he still can't get his license back until he pays it off anyway. On the plus side, he doesn't have to buy gasoline. It's like, this is real, right? The probability of you getting into an accident is probably like, pretty low, but it's there, right? No one plans to be on an accident, right? So like this is what could happen to you. Like you have YouTubers here saying, yeah, take cash rides. You just tell your insurance is like taking your brother or your sister. But I think your brother or your sister is way less likely to sue you, right? Extremely less likely to sue you. And you can't get around this, right? You'd have to get commercial insurance. We're going to cover commercial insurance, the costs. I think it actually might be up next. It might be in this next story. What are the cons of black market rides, cash rides? I got real lucky on a personal ride. It was raining, and I got into an accident with an 18-wheeler and totaled my car with a passenger who was paying cash. Luckily, at the time, no one was injured. The cops come, and it was raining pretty good. I had no problem getting out and talking to the cop to let him make his report, but my passenger refused to get out the car and talk to the cop because it was raining out. The cop shrugged his shoulders and said, if she doesn't want to talk to me, then I don't want to talk to her, and he completely left the passenger out of the report. Got lucky. The next day, I was sore as F. The passenger actually called me for another ride a couple days later, but I was paranoid of her trying to get my info, so I told her I moved across country and said goodbye. So, that's kind of a negative story. He was doing it. He almost got caught. He got lucky with it. We don't really know if he continues doing it or not. Someone has a more positive story where they say they have 18 clients. I pulled off Uber and Lyft. I got 5 to 10 requests a week from them. They pay me 100% of the fare they would have been charged by the app. They get a freshly cleaned Audi A7, and he kind of goes through, some other benefits. All right, there is a benefit of cash rides. The benefit here is that you get a larger share of the income. In this case, he gets 100%, and he charges them whatever Uber and Lyft would have charged them, right? So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's all bad things. There are bad things that we should be aware of, even in the face of this. Someone says at least 1 to 2 times a week, I will be waiting on a ride and someone will approach with a lot of cash to take. That happen at concerts and things like that. Instantly cancel and take them every time. I recommend getting payment up front. A big one is you will have no recourse if the passenger pukes or otherwise damages your car. I've done it a few times, and in general, they tend to behave much worse when their rider account isn't on the line. That's an interesting perspective. But like I said earlier, you would have to just be socially aware of who you do and who you don't want as a cash client. It's also illegal if you don't have a business license and commercial license. This person says he's gonna hand out business cards to certain passengers only. That's if I were doing it, that's how I would do it. And then someone says it will work out fine until it doesn't. It also really ends up being convenient for you to pick up a specific person at a specific time. That's something I have thought about. And I'll break that down a little more in a second. You will likely end up deadheading a lot of miles and wasting time to make ride appointments. You will have to charge them a lot more to make up for all the risk and inconvenience. As tempting as it may be, it's just less hassle and safer to drive on the platform. That's true, but you make less money. Uber and Lyft definitely treat drivers poorly and underpay sometimes, but it's very good to have a middleman between you and your passenger in a lot of situations. This is a balanced take, right? This is a very middle ground take. He's saying, hey, here's some of the problems. Here's things you should be aware of. I wish there were more middle ground people in the world. If you have a passenger 20 minutes from where you live, you take them 10 minutes to where they're going. This is a cash ride, right? And then you go home. That's 50 minutes right there. So you would need to be able to price it based off of that. You should price it based off of that. And what's going to happen is that price point, depending on that scenario, would start to encroach on being more expensive than just if they were to take Uber or Lyft themselves. So that is something you got to think about. I'm sure there are ways around it. Maybe you just go Uber or Lyft in that area until they're ready. And then when you drop them off, you keep Ubering or Lyfting. You know what? There's things that you can do to minimize the deadhead. That is something you have to think about. Someone says, agree. There is a lot of value in having an arm's length relationship with the rider. I also agree that you're likely never going to be in their general vicinity when they want a ride, nor be up to giving a ride to them at the same time they want. Unless OP wants to go through the trouble of licensing and insuring as a for-hire vehicle outside of Uber, it's unlikely it'll be worth the risk. That's kind of how I feel. There is a way to legally do this, and it does cost money. I ran the numbers for my own city. I'm going to show you what they look like. It does cost money. If I were to do this, I would want to do it properly. But I also understand why drivers don't want to do it properly. We're going to cover both of those. All right, so this is a news story about illegally operating rideshare drivers in Las Vegas. Zoom in here. As Las Vegas tourism bounces back to pre-pandemic levels, state officials have said some rideshare drivers are given illegal rides that cost passengers much more than a standard fare. Now, this is an older article. No, it's not. It's posted. It's about a year old, 2023. The Nevada Department of Business and Industry briefed state legislators in early March about their ever-increasing offerings and development in and around the Strip, leaving an increased demand for transportation without enough resources to address it. This is a quote. "We need help. We need to help to keep people safe," Nevada Transportation Authority Commissioner Dawn Gibson told legislators in March. In a state with roughly 3,500 taxi drivers and 30,000 rideshare drivers, that's a lot. The topic of this March discussion was that bad actors amongst these workers are provoking safety concerns for passengers they convince to drive, right? You could be the best cash driver ever in terms of customer service, but if people around you aren't, it's going to make the whole pool look bad. Todd Park, NTA Chief of Enforcement, referred to these people as illegal operators or drivers who offer rides for cash only without following regulations set by the state. Many times, these drivers appear to operate for a legitimate business and frequently do. A lot of times, the drivers will pull up and say, "Hey, anybody here need a ride?" Most of the time, they're working for Uber or Lyft. Park said these drivers will convince people to accept their ride off the app, which allows them to pocket whatever money is given to them by the passenger. Unlike other regulated drivers, these ones do not have the relevant insurance to cover medical costs if they're involved in an accident while driving passengers. For context, rideshare businesses are required to hold $1.5 million in insurance when transporting a passenger. That doesn't mean you pay $1.5 million. It means you need to pay for enough coverage for $1.5 million. That leaves the person who got hurt, injured, killed, whatever holding the bag for the medical expense they got. The chief said that NTA does weekly sting operations to crack down on at least 40 known drivers operating this way in southern Nevada. But the problem now, Park said, is that these drivers are becoming organized. They'll have pre-shift briefings. They'll have pictures of my staff. They have pictures of my staff's vehicles, Park said. They'll call everybody else in their group and tell them, "Hey, don't come here. NTA's out here." Which, you know, do what you gotta do. I'm not hitting on them. I'm not supporting them. I'm making you aware, like, what's happening. He added that of those that have caught, several offenders have connections to illegal drugs or illicit sex industry that are offered to passengers. Okay, I never read this far into the article. I didn't realize that was a thing. We're just going to continue to grow, and this problem is going to continue. Yeah, with Uber and Lyft decreasing like how they're paying people, yeah, it's going to continue. The biggest method to avoid falling victim to these drivers, Park said, is to stay on the Rideshare app. He urges passengers only to get into cars that were first confirmed through or Lyft. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind, right? If your government telling people not to do this thing, it's gonna make it more likely that someone's gonna report you for doing that thing. So you really gotta be careful. Additionally, he adds passengers should always look for the proper signage and stickers on the car's window that ensures the driver was vetted by either the NTA or the rideshare company. Vegas, they have like decals that go on their window to show that they're a driver or whatever. Drivers caught operating illegally in this manner face up to a $10,000 fine and your car impounded, right? So you get caught just once, car's impounded. And the way you would make money to get your car out of impound would be to drive. So you got to make sure if you're going to do this illegally, you need to have $10,000 in your emergency fund, plus whatever it costs to get your car out of impound. That's if I were to do it illegally. That's what would make me comfortable to do it illegally. But this also doesn't really say if they suspend your license or not. All right, so before we switch topics completely, I did some research into what it would take for me to become a licensed official person that can pick up people, right? So in my state, you'd have to register your car as a limousine in order to pick up scheduled rides. The cost of the registration is like $250. Easy. And it's not bad. But then I learned that if I want to have limousine license plates on my car, I would have to like trade in my like personal license plates. And in Charleston, I can't use a limousine license plate to do Uber and Lyft. If I wanted to do private rides and continue to do Uber and Lyft, because that's how it would more than likely build my customer base is through Uber and Lyft. I would have to then get a second car, get that car licensed correctly, and still have my personal car that I can use for Uber and Lyft. So let's assume a modest $15,000, right? I go buy a used car for $15,000, like cash. That's what I would need immediately. In order to do that, we'll add the 250 registration. Now we need to think about commercial insurance. If you don't have commercial insurance and someone sues you, you're screwed for a very long time. If they sue you for $100,000, we just learned you can't bankrupt that, and you're gonna have to pay it. So let's look into what insurance would cost. So if someone says it's not as easy as you think, it's also state by state, has different types of common insurance. Livery can be up to $600 a month, while TCP in CA, which is California, is much cheaper at $309, $400. So it depends on where you live, how much people are paying. Well, in CA, I pay $600 a month for his commercial insurance. All right, so we'll run with that. So we already have to pay 15 grand for a new car, 250 for the registration, and then we're gonna do, what was it? 600 times 12, $600 times 12 months, plus the 15 grand I'd have to pay for another car, plus the 250. So with just that, right? I don't even know if there's any other costs that might be associated with it. You would have to make, not you, Tristan Thomas would have to do $22,000, $450 in private rides in order to make that work, in order to break even. We're not even seeing profit yet. That's why a lot of people are doing it like illegally. They're not getting the correct insurance because they first have to build up their clientele to justify it, right? You're gonna be paying $600 a month extra in insurance. And if you're not making $600 a month in private rides, you're gonna be like, I don't really wanna do that. Even if you're making double that, like if you're making 1,000, it's gonna leave you with 400. So you still might be like, I don't really want to do that. So I understand why people aren't doing it. They're taking the risk. And I'm not going to tell you should or shouldn't take the risk, but you need to be aware of what the risk is. All right. So I'm going to read some comments and then we're going to move on to a different topic where Uber drivers say the job has become more competitive and that it's made their work less profitable.